Hey everyone, Owlvine here. Welcome to Starting Out Solitary. This week we're talking about casting for ourselves versus casting for others. This is a topic that a lot of people feel very strongly about, either for or against. Some people think that as witches and magical practitioners, we should be using our magical abilities in service of others, and some people feel like they really don't want to be using that energy on anyone else, but want to keep it, for themselves, and that it's a very personal thing. Both of these opinions are obviously completely valid, and it really depends on the practitioner and how you feel about it personally. One thing I think that it's really important to consider when wanting to cast for someone else, or when someone asks you to cast for them, is your level of magical experience and magical competence. So if you've only been practicing for a very short time, it may not be ethical for you to cast for anyone else. Now again, this is a very personal decision, and only you will know how competent you feel and how competent you are at doing your magic. So there isn't like a certain timeline that you should follow when deciding to cast for someone else or not. Some people do it, straight away. As soon as they kind of discover witchcraft, they just get into casting for other people, and some will wait years, some will never do it. So that's another thing to consider as well. How confident you feel about doing magic for someone else, and I guess also that others know how experienced you are too. So if a friend comes to you and says, hey, I've got this going on, can you please cast some magic for me? If they know that you've only been practicing for a short amount of time and that's cool with them, then that's fine. Obviously it's about how you kind of advertise it. Some people put themselves out there online or within the community and offer magical workings for other people. I think it's sort of important to let others know what your level of experience is. I think that's just kind of an ethics, morality kind of thing. Again, it's up to the actual practitioner, but it's something to consider. A topic I've seen come up quite a lot in this discussion about casting for others is knowing the full details of what someone wants. So when we cast for ourselves, of course we know everything that's going on for us psychologically, energetically, very much within our own scape. Whereas if someone else approaches us and says, I want this certain magic done for me, we can hear in depth about what they want, but all of the details and the nuances won't be there. We are still going to see what they need from our own point of view, from our own experiences and filters, of course. So we're not going to know all those sorts of things. And a lot of people sort of use this as a reason that they don't cast for other people, so that's an ethics thing. However, I think it's more the responsibility of the person looking for magical work to be done for them than it is for the practitioner. If someone has decided that they want magical work done for them, they either aren't a practitioner or they feel like they don't have enough experience for whatever it is they want done or need done, that's completely up to them. If they felt like they have gone to a magical practitioner and they're putting their faith and trust that this person knows what they're doing, which again comes back to magical experience and making sure that you're upfront, I think, about how much you actually have, then that's okay. That's completely up to that person. If you don't feel comfortable doing magical work for other people for that reason, that's perfectly fine too. But it is something that I think is more upon the person who is wanting magical work than the person doing the magical work, if that makes sense. Another thing to consider when casting for other people versus casting for ourselves is energy depletion. When we do magical work, when we engage in magical work, we are literally putting our energy out there into the ether for something to come back to us or something to be released, whatever it is, for something to happen. So that requires sometimes a lot of energy. Sometimes it doesn't require as much as other times. I find when I do magical workings that it usually does take up quite a bit of energy, and those are the spells that always seem to work really well too, when I'm really pouring myself into it. So when we're practicing for ourselves, we are releasing that energy, but we're also getting it back in the form of manifestation or something changing within our lives. So that energy exchange happens quite naturally. When we are casting for other people, unless we're really close to that person, like if it's someone who you are deeply involved with, say a loved one or a very close friend, you may be invested in what actually happens for them. So for example, recently I did a job spell for a friend, and he's someone who's very close to me. He's been a friend to me for years. So I feel quite invested in what happens in his life, you know, like if something good happens to him, I feel like I receive from his happiness. So to me, the energy exchange has already happened that way. But if it's someone that you don't know or someone that you're not particularly close to, if the spell work manifests for them or works for them, it may not naturally boost you with that energy. So in times gone by, if we look through history, shamans and local healers and local witches were usually traded with. So someone would come to them for help and they would be given something in return. You know, maybe it would be food, maybe it would be certain crafts, it might be service of another kind. These days we usually don't trade. We now, instead of trading, we kind of have created this middleman called money. So if you are casting for somebody else, you may want to consider how you are going to receive energy back. Because as we cast, we do let out that energy. And if we don't restore it, then we end up burning out, and, you know, all kinds of things can happen from that, from ill health to just simply having some kind of spiritual, magical burnout. So that's why people charge money for these services. Now, some people are very funny on the whole money thing. Oh, that rhymed. They feel like money is kind of a dirty thing. Personally, like, I can see where people are coming from. Just, you know, there are some really ugly attitudes that have come up around money, and that's kind of a whole nother topic really. But all it is, the way I like to think of it, is trading notes. It's just a slip of paper that on its own has absolutely no value. What the value is in it is what it can then get for us, or what it represents that we can obtain through trading these slips for something that we actually want. So effectively it's just the middleman within trade now. So I don't feel like there's anything wrong or dirty about accepting money for magical workings or anything like that. It's just the modern way of receiving some form of energy for a work that we do, a service we provide, or an item that is bought or sold. These are some of my thoughts on casting for others versus casting for ourselves. Really, it's been more about casting for others, but these are just some things that I kind of wanted to put out there for people to consider if they are going to cast for someone else. One thing I do want to bring up quickly too, if we are casting for ourselves, it is really important to fill up our energetic tanks too. So we do receive that energy when our magical workings come to pass, but I think it's important to keep an eye on that well, and remember that we need to do more than just that as well. Depending on how much we are actually engaging in magical work, we need to know how to fill ourselves back up too. So it may be taking baths, it may be reading books, it may be spending time outside, it may be putting our feet in the dirt, it may be watching YouTube videos, it may be creating new spaces. It may be sitting in meditation. Whatever it is, remember to fill yourself back up that way too. And actually it is the same thing when casting for others. Even if you are receiving something for the magical work you're doing, you need to be taking care of yourself, and you need to be filling yourself up as much as possible so that you can be brimming over. You don't want to be taking from your stores, you want to be brimming over with magical abundance. So that's something else to remember as well, is always fill your cup. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next week on Starting Out Solitary. So much love.